Michael, this is horrible news out of the Denver Nuggets. It affects so many, including those across Canada. And very quickly, their release says out indefinitely. But when we're talking about an injury, a torn ACL, what does indefinitely generally mean?
12 months. There's cases of people coming back sooner than that. I think Kyle Lowry actually came back from a torn ACL in about 6 months or maybe less. But, he's clearly out for the rest of the season. And no matter how far the Nuggets do go, he would clearly be unavailable for Canada this summer, no matter how far Canada goes. And, I think the most optimistic at this stage would be, could he possibly be available at the beginning of next year? And again, I think that'd be very optimistic.
Oh, man. Well, let's talk about the impact on both the Nuggets and Canadian basketball. First, with this NBA team. Last, summer, I guess, with the playoffs in the NBA, we always have had that argument: who's the best Canadian player now? And Jamal Murray really separated himself from the field last spring. In summer, you said it was almost historic, some of the run that he was on. And recently, he'd gotten back to that form. So this is really, really tough in that regard as a fan and as someone who would, let's say, as part of Jamal Murray's inner circle.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who could look at this as anything other than sad, and then we were talking off air, like all injuries, for athletes are bad and to varying degrees concerning, and your empathy is easy to find. But, some injuries are truly sad. And I would put this in that category, just because if you are somebody who loves basketball, let alone a Nuggets fan or a Canadian basketball fan, you just had to really love watching the Denver Nuggets play and how they've come on the past 6 weeks, 2 months. And Jamal Murray's been a huge part of that. I mean, he's back at the last 2 months, the level he was at the bubble. I mean, a 45% 3-point shooter, 24 points a game, big assist numbers, and just playing that beautiful two-man game with Nikola Jokic. It was kind of must-see TV. And then when you look what the Nuggets did, the trade deadline to really make a push and get Aaron Gordon, I mean, it's very easy to envision that team making a Western Conference final or an NBA final or even winning a title. And, that's not saying they can't do all those things now, but it's certainly going to be a lot more difficult without their version of Steph Curry or Dame Lillard. And then for Canadian basketball, it is a real blow. It was unlikely if the Nuggets were going to reach their goals that Jamal Murray would have been available for the Olympic qualifying in late June. But if all systems were go and Canada did manage to get to Tokyo, he had committed multiple times and indicated he was going to play. And when you look at putting a team together to win a short tournament like that, to win sudden death games, 40-minute games, and you're starting with a backcourt, let's say, of Jamal Murray and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that literally is on par with almost any team in the world. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at it, for a team like Canada to get to a podium, that's where your mind goes. It's Jamal Murray being Jamal Murray, as we saw in the bubble. We've seen various points in his career, and just taking games over. And to have a player like that on your roster, was why Canada had to be a very serious threat for a medal. And, it's, again, you're not saying they can't get to the Olympics and they can't make noise when they're there, but it's sad to think how much different those prospects might be if Jamal Murray were healthy.
And you go back the last time they were there, 2000, and they had Steve Nash. It did all those things that you describe, a guy that could take over a game, put them on the back. The difference is now that Canada has more depth, obviously, at the NBA level. So in your mind, given an open slate, if everybody's available for the qualifying, who sort of steps up? You mentioned Shai. Who else needs to be that guy for Canada to get them over the hump?
Yeah, Shai for sure. And, the caveat there is he's dealing with plantar fasciitis. So that's a complicated injury at the best of times. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of caution with that. I think Andrew Wiggins, he is a guy who's, in terms of his career, in terms of his contract, in terms of how he can play when, the chips are down. And we've seen him do that at times. And just his level of athleticism on the perimeter, like, you can't really duplicate that. I think RJ Barrett is showing signs of being a really good international player, with, as we've talked about this past week, how he's improved as a shooter. so there's a lot of candidates. It's not like all of a sudden all hope is lost. But again, I think for a team like Canada, Jamal Murray, I think, was going to be the so-called alpha. Like he was going to be the guy, and then everything kind of gets organized from there. And the reason is because I think he's the best Canadian player in the world right now. I mean, there's competition for that title, but he's the one. And again, it's not like everything's doom and gloom, but again, you would have loved to see Jamal Murray at his full peak with a Canadian jersey on.
Absolutely. That's Sportsnet.ca's Michael Grange on a sad day for Canadian basketball.